Hello and welcome. My name is Emile Zitzke. I am a senior lecturer at the Wits School of Law, where I'm responsible for the teaching of the master's course in access to information and privacy law. The question that has been put to me today is the following. Is it legal to disclose or publish the COVID-19 status of another person? The Disaster Management Act regulations are clear about the fact that we are not allowed to lie about our own COVID-19 status or the COVID-19 status of someone else. If you happen to be older than 5 years of age, you probably understand why lying is regarded as a bad thing and why this rule consequently makes sense. But what about the situation where you know about someone else who has tested positive for COVID-19 and you want to share that information with other people because you know that the fact is indeed true? I think an argument can be made about why, as a general rule, you should not disclose the COVID-19 status of another person. But I think convincing arguments can also be made about many other situations where you should be allowed to disclose the COVID-19 status of another. Why do I say that our starting point should probably be that we shouldn't disclose the COVID-19 status of another person? The starting point is that we all have a constitutional right to privacy that we find in Section 14 of the Constitution. This right entitles us to have the privacy of our homes respected, as is the case with our communications with others, and also to have information about ourselves kept private. Sometime in the near future, the protection of private information will be regulated by the Protection of Personal Information Act, also known as the POPI Act or the POPIA. But this will only take effect once the legislation is in full force. In the meantime, we have other laws that protect the privacy of our information in various ways. If you breach someone else's privacy, you can be held criminally liable in the sense of attracting a criminal record and some form of punishment. You can also be held civilly liable in the sense of having to pay money to the victims of a privacy breach. At first glance, one example of personal information that is worthy of protection might be your COVID-19 status. In this regard, we can perhaps learn something from a constitutional court case. When Patricia DeLille's biography was published some years ago, the author thought it appropriate to publish the full names of a list of women who were HIV positive, living in a particular area, who were helped by Patricia DeLille. One of the questions before the court was whether the privacy of the woman living with HIV had been breached when their names were attached to a specific HIV status in the book. The short answer was that the woman's privacy was indeed breached. The court was aware of the fact that in some communities, being HIV positive means that you could suffer a great deal of discrimination, stigma, and in some cases even experience severe forms of hatred. The court was indeed saddened by the fact that this is the reality experienced by many people, and the court did not turn a blind eye to the fact that this is the lived experience of some people living with HIV, that they do not want their status made known public. To put it in legal terms, we could perhaps say that people have a reasonable expectation in having their HIV status kept private. The court was very careful to explain that there's nothing shameful about their HIV status, but the law recognizes that individuals should be given a choice about how much of a person's private information is indeed made public. As a country, I think we've done very good in terms of respecting the dignity of COVID-19 patients overall. However, in some parts of the world, and I have no doubt in some parts of South Africa too, some groups have said some really hurtful things about COVID-19 patients. For example, we've heard it being said by some that COVID-19 patients are being punished for their sin, or similar really harsh statements. Thus, it's understandable that some COVID-19 patients, especially those who find themselves in communities where they are surrounded by haters, might want to keep their status of COVID-19 positive private as far as possible. With that being said, our right to privacy is not absolute. The right to privacy can be limited in various ways to give way to other rights of other people, as long as this would be justified in a democracy based on the values of human dignity, equality, and freedom. If you have disclosed the COVID-19 status of another person, there are at least two main reasons that you could give to justify your invasion of their privacy. In law, we call these reasons grounds of justification. The first ground of justification is more individualistic in nature, and the second group of grounds of justification would be more community orientated. The first ground of justification is consent. If the COVID-19 patient has agreed to have their status revealed to the world, then you are surely allowed to distribute that information further. Some celebrities have posted about their COVID-19 statuses on their public social media platforms like Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. However, I think we need to be careful here, because if someone tells you this information in confidence, it is not up to you to spread that news any further. So a private WhatsApp message that someone has sent to you informing you that they have tested positive for COVID-19 does not necessarily give you license to distribute that information to the whole world. The context of the COVID-19 patient's disclosure in this regard really matters. It is always wisest to obtain the full and informed consent of the COVID-19 patient before distributing their status to other people, and it would always be best to secure this consent in writing or in some other form that can be recorded and retrieved really easily. The second set of grounds of justification are focused more on the interests of the community at large. The disclosure of a COVID-19 patient's status would be allowed if it is necessary to do so to protect other people's rights. For example, we know that once you have contracted COVID-19 and you were in close contact with other people since your infection, those other people are at risk of having contracted COVID-19 as well. As such, other people's constitutional rights to bodily integrity and perhaps even the right to life could be at risk. In such a case, it is possible for us to say that the right to privacy perhaps needs to take a backseat to the rights to life and limb of other people. That is why, for example, government is allowed to have and maintain a database with the personal details of COVID-19 patients and the people who they have recently been in contact with. However, we could argue that government would be going too far if they publish your COVID-19 status for all South Africans to see on the news. You see, the public might find it interesting to know who has COVID-19 and who doesn't. But someone sitting in Joburg doesn't necessarily have a very clear public interest in knowing the names of COVID-19 patients in the Eastern Cape. Even though the law protects our right to freedom of expression and the free flow of information, the law doesn't really protect our right to salacious gossip and the right to scandalize other people. In the end, I think it is really all about effectively balancing competing rights, which is much of what constitutional law is about. In my view, our law on this point, and perhaps our law in general, ought to be geared towards protecting individuals and their rights, including the right to privacy, while simultaneously being conscious of the fact that we are born into a really complex web of social relationships, where the values of solidarity, care, and compassion should be regarded as being of paramount importance. As an intuitive rule of thumb, in short, think twice before you spread the COVID-19 status of someone else, and perhaps treat the privacy of others in the way that you would want them to treat yours. Please take care, not only of yourself, but also of the rights of other people. Goodbye.